You are listening to the Algorütm podcast. It's 9th of December and it's our 109th episode. I am Priit Liivak from Nortal and with me is Tiit Paananen from Veriff. So hi Tiit.
Hey, how are you doing?
As you might have figured out by now, this episode will be the second episode that we will have recorded in English. We figured that let's give it another try. The topic is still about the Estonian developers landscape though. Our guest today is Benedikt Geiger, a man who started with business administration in Germany and has transitioned now to a developer role in Estonia. Welcome, Benedikt.
Tere. Thanks for having me.
Let's as this is mostly a story of your career and your transitioning to a developer in Estonia. Let's start off from way back. So, why did you study business administration, and what's that all about? And why didn't you like it?
My way to become a software developer is a little bit more complex. So as you mentioned, I'm from Germany. I grew up in a little town in Bavaria, northeast of Bavaria. And my original plan was actually to play the trumpet. I'm a musician, but I have a twin brother who also makes music, and he was always better in music, and I didn't want to play the second fiddle there. And then I decided basically to go a little bit more into music management, and decided I think it would be a good idea to start with business administration. Did some internships there and there, and was working in Berlin for Sony Music Entertainment. But then I figured out it's even harder to work with musician as being a musician. And then I didn't really like it. Started business administration, didn't really like the attitude of the people, the business people, and didn't fit in very well, didn't want to do that. And then I started...
Let me dig a little bit into detail. So just for the sake of facts being correct, you were a same-cell twin?
I'm identical twin, yes.
Identical twin, yeah.
Yeah.
And there are differences in terms of your capabilities to grasp music.
So basically he was put I think a little bit more effort into it. He was playing much better piano than me and stuff like that. And so he was always a little bit better, and I didn't want to be the second fiddle there.
All right, so we got this being cleared out. Practice makes you master. Very cool. Yeah, so business people, what's wrong with business people?
What I didn't really like is even during university, especially in Germany, it's I was sitting in the auditorium, and then when I see people already coming in with suits and stuff like that, and having this attitude of some shady business people already during university, and I was oh no, I don't want to be that. Let's do something else.
Interesting. Yeah.
And then basically I thought what else to do, coding and tech was also a little bit of a hobby. I did some home projects, but more for myself, nothing public or anything else. And then I was looking in my current town. It's in Bayreuth. It's also a city in Bavaria. And there was an IT company who were searching actually for business people as well. So I started working at least in an IT company as a business person. Was also very interesting there that it was also a smaller startup, around 20 people and 19 developers, and I was somehow the first business person there. And
what was the product, by the way?
It was more a form tool, something like Elementor or Wix and something like that, where you have a form tool which you can implement on your page, and then we process this kind of stuff. But somehow they didn't know really what to do with a business person. I was the first business person there, didn't really had work.
Right, so there was a bunch of developers, and then you came in as a business person who didn't like business people.
And everybody looked you funny. What are you doing?
Actually it was weird in the beginning, since I was sitting there trying to figure out what to do, writing some business plans or whatever, but I didn't really understand them. They didn't really understand me. It was a little bit awkward. Didn't really have much work. Was actually like really bored out there. And then I said before, like I'm doing nothing. I said like, yeah, let's pick me up like a little bit of coding. And they let me. I was very lucky that they hired me, and I was able to actually dig there into coding. Started there with like some quality assurance. Was doing some end-to-end testing, CI/CD setting up and stuff like that. Obviously, it took a lot longer in the beginning since it was still new everything to me, but was very happy and lucky that I was able to do that. Had work to do, and these were my first steps into
what was
being a developer.
What was the tech stack like?
The tech stack for the framework was PyTest. This is, I think, a Python framework test thing. We did some like Selenium functional end-to-end testing, going basically automatic browser testing, setting up the form and putting the elements in and these kind of stuff. This was mainly the stuff I dealt with in the 1.5 years I was working there.
So to wrap this, you entered a company as a business person, and then you raised your hand and said, "Hey, I'd like to try to do some coding," and then they said, "Hey, why not?"
Basically it. It's like before I sit there and do nothing as a business person, or actually something with not much value. Like there were these 19 developers, this one CEO, which was who was always on the road, and then I said let's do it, or let's ask at least. Like before I leave the company and try to do something else, there's always a chance maybe to approach another domain.
So you growing up, you didn't actually realize that you are an engineer at heart, or did you?
No, actually no. It's like.
But you mentioned that you did some tinkering at home.
I was always a little bit interested in tech. I was always a little bit jealous in a sense, because I already started business administration, and my thinking was always, okay, I can never become a developer. I never studied computer science and stuff like that, and this was for me somewhere far away, which later then basically I realized that you don't necessarily have to study to become a developer and engineer, but back then I didn't know that. So I did some writing small scripts at home or trying to figure out, but didn't really have a good approach, because there's so much out there and I didn't know where to start. So it was more like a little try and error thingy at home in my little basement.
But yeah, I mean, the music prepares the brain pretty well for the math. So you did probably well in those business calculations, and as well,
that's true. It's
etc.
That's definitely true. It's I was also more like a classical musician, and classical music, this is arguable as in its structure, very, very complex, and definitely has also studies where they compare mathematicians and musicians. There's actually a lot in common there.
So at one point, you thought, when did you come to the conclusion that you need to leave Germany and come to Estonia and work as a developer here?
Before that, I worked in this company, and then I said okay, I finished my bachelor in business administration. I said to have a little bit better of my feelings still, I still decided to study something. So I put on a master in information systems, which went a little bit more into tech direction, but not really computer science. It also was more business with IT. It's business IT, something like that. So I did
more Excel.
more or less.
I'm joking.
Yeah. And then I actually studied 2 years my master in Darmstadt. This is a city near Frankfurt. So was also having this step there, master in information systems. And after that, I actually was working for a e-commerce company in Darmstadt, one of the an online e-commerce shop, and also got some experience there. There was like mainly like a PHP stack. We had like a big PHP monolith, and the task were to split it into sustainable little microservice and this kind of stuff. But there was actually most of the time where I felt also like a little bit unsafe, since like this was my real proper job where I actually like applied with an interview as a developer, still didn't like had the feeling, okay, I never did this really computer science, and then I'm all of a sudden there around like 200 developers around me, which I thought like know everything and I don't know anything at all. And there I got my first
interview though.
Yeah, that's actually a funny story, and coming maybe later back also to the topic of the imposter syndrome, that I remember the interview very well. Like I went there and they somehow missed the appointment. Like I arrived there and the person who should have interviewed me wasn't there. And first of all, I waited there, and then the CEO came in, and it was more like an improvised interview, and he didn't really ask any technical interview question. It was more like a talk to each other to maybe check the company fit, the cultural fit and stuff like that. So actually I didn't answer any technical question there. And like at the same day, they said like, yeah, if you want to work for us, you can work for us. And I was like, oh, I was lucky. And this is also the same thing.
Or maybe they were lucky. I mean, otherwise they might have not recruited you, but
yeah. But yeah, that's also then my thinking was again, which when I think about it now, like I somehow derived this now basically, oh, I got lucky. I landed this job, which is also like part of the imposter syndrome, that you derive your achievements by luck or anything else. I didn't realize, okay, maybe it was a good cultural fit, or actually like I was able to land this job because of my achievements, because of my skills and stuff like that. But back in the day, I somehow derived this more like being lucky.
It's interesting. Maybe we'll stop for that topic for a moment. So there was an e-commerce in Germany, in Darmstadt, yeah, e-commerce company. They missed the interview from their side, and they hired you in one day by CEO interviewing a developer, and there you ended up with 200 developers. So quite different to the average or normal interview process, where you go through several rounds, to do the desk tasks or do system design, whiteboarding, whatnot. So you basically
if there's a
jump through the loops.
200, and if there's a 200 developer company, it's fairly difficult to get at the table with CEO.
Yeah. It
doesn't happen usually.
Yeah, like I don't know, like probably they were like, oh damn it, there's somebody, we need to do the interview now. And like originally the company is from Cologne, and they wanted to start a new office in Darmstadt. And even like in Germany, it's also very difficult to hire developers, as I think in most of the companies. And maybe they were just happy that people are applying, and they wanted to build up like a new office in Darmstadt with new people, and were happy to get like developers at all. And
yeah, exactly. So they realized, oh, we have a normal person here, let's hire him.
He wants to join. But I have a question. When was it, time-wise? Was it like, how many years back was it?
Like 2016, 17, where I started and basically the job in Real Digital. This was the name of the company, the online e-commerce shop. And then I worked there for like 1-2 years, something like that. Before then, like all the Corona stuff happened, and then where I somehow made the decision to move to Estonia.
All right. So did you know about Estonia before?
Like I knew, like I've never been to Estonia before I landed here directly. I actually once, like the German Lufthansa company, they have like a program, you buy like a plane ticket for 60 euros, but you don't know where you're going to. And I did this once, and there were like the Baltic states. There was like Estonia, Lithuania, and other countries. And I somehow like hoped like, I heard something about Estonia, like being a digital nation, very techy and stuff like that. And I somehow like back then I hoped that it's gonna be Estonia, but I ended up basically in Lithuania. And I spent a weekend there, but it was also nice. But yeah, I've never been to Estonia. I heard like some stories regarding all this marketing from Estonia in terms of like make your tax declaration in 3 minutes and all this kind of
small
stuff.
Country with a great PR department.
But like obviously governments and countries also do marketing, and you never really know what is like marketing, what is the real deal, and stuff like that. But so read some articles, heard about it, but have never been to Estonia until I'm now here.
Yeah. So how did your application to Estonia went?
Yeah.
So was it as easy? Did you get at the table with CEO immediately? Did they miss the interview, or were they on time?
Yeah, exactly.
It was actually surprisingly easy. Like, so back in Germany, when also Corona hit, I was like most of the time working from home. I finished my studies. All my study friends were leaving Darmstadt, the city I was currently living in. And I got a little bit tired, wanted some change. And my first intention was to leave the current city at Darmstadt, and was looking for like some jobs in Munich or Berlin. But then I thought like, okay, why not like just leaving the country and not just the city? And then I was Googling around, and I somehow ended up in www.workinestonia.com. And was like just browsing through jobs, searched for some like proper tech stack which fits me, and then I was applying. I think I wrote like 4 or 5 applications, and from basically the decision to write the application until I was actually landing in Estonia was, I think, only 3 months or something like that. It was super quick. Got like from these 5 applications, got some responses from like Outfunnel, where I'm currently working in, also some other companies. Had like
It would be interesting to know based on which criteria you decided to apply, like in terms of companies.
How did you choose the companies?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like mostly I was like browsing regarding the tech stack, since my back then in the online e-commerce shop tech stack was mostly like PHP, but also like a little bit of Node.js, front end Vue.js. And so I was actually like searching for some PHP stack companies. I think there was like Beasley where I applied. Twilio was also one of the companies I applied, and Outfunnel. Outfunnel was like mostly Node.js, but also Vue.js in the front end. So it was mainly about the tech stack where I've chosen the companies. For me, it's not so much important, I must say, in which like in which domain I'm working. May it be e-commerce, it can be something completely different. Since I think I try to distinguish it a little bit. Like code is code for me in the end. If you architect is architecture, you design some stuff. I'm more happy about like having a good environment, doing this kind of stuff. If the domain then is also like super interesting for me, this would be a good fit. But at least for me, it's not like the main argument.
So which domains are interesting to you?
Good question. Let me think about it a little bit. I liked like the e-commerce stuff. I was dealing there with like the distribution of packages, where people, when they order something, then you have to like to follow and track these kind of packages. But yeah, honestly, I'm like not very like indifferent about the domain. Not so much of a big argument for me.
So in this time, was there a tech interview?
There was a tech interview, or also several stages. Then I had first a interview with the engineering manager back then, talking a little bit about it. Then I had a example task to do for Outfunnel in this case, where I have to basically write a little API client to retrieve some information from. In this case, it was actually I think Pipedrive and Mailchimp was involved, basically retrieving contracts from Pipedrive and syncing the contacts to Mailchimp. In this case, this was the example.
How confident did you feel while doing that test assignment or technical interview?
It was interesting.
How confident did you feel this time?
Not too much confidence. My stack was mostly PHP, and they asked me to do the task in Node.js. So it was also a little bit of diving into Node.js a little bit more. But they gave me a 1 week time to do it. I had a lot of fun doing it, also dealing with Node.js. And in the end, actually, I thought I did not not the best job there with the task. But they said yeah, super fine. They also said doesn't have to be perfect. Also in regards to the time, it's more about talking about how the approach is, what are the flaws, what would you do better, and if you can argue and explain these kind of stuff.
Was it Carl who interviewed you?
Exactly, Karl.
Karl Ranneberg. Yeah. In Estonia, people know each other.
I also realized that we also have people coming over from different companies and giving some talks, and I really have the feeling that people know each other and also try to help each other. I think that's quite healthy. That it's not competing too much on the Estonian market. Okay, everybody needs developers, but at least I have the feeling that the people here in the startups want to bring Estonia as in total as a tech startup scene forward, and not try to compete and bring each other down.
Definitely sense of community here.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right. So you landed with Outfunnel job.
Yes, Outfunnel. Yeah. Was quite interesting since it was back then when I started, we were nine people. I was the 10th person, so I came here and it's I was the only foreigner. So it was me and 9 Estonians, and quite.
You were the reason why people started talking in English at meetings.
Probably, it's they switched then, but it was definitely no problem for them. It's very impressive, how well, especially English speaking people are around. It's definitely no problem to get along with English here. But also trying to pick up Estonian definitely, and it actually helps. Or I have the feeling that you can definitely connect better if it's only a few little sentences you talk with your colleague in Estonian. It definitely helps to get a better sense of teamwork and collaboration and feeling.
Preet, go ahead.
I wanted to ask about the difference in the companies that you then had experience in. I know it's not a fair comparison, as one is 200 developer organization, and another one is 10 developer organization. But still, what kind of differences in the culture you can bring out? I'm especially looking for something that illustrates a German software development company and then Estonian software development company.
The first thing which I realized was it's more a minor detail, but it was quite interesting. At least from my experience, I can only talk what I experienced in Germany and an Estonian company. It's other people could have different experiences. When it comes to reviewing pull requests, actually, I had always the feeling that Germany in this company, when we were reviewing pull requests, commenting other people's code, I felt always receiving some sort of love letters or writing love letters. It always started hey colleague, nice implementation, what do you think about that? We could also do this abroad. It was writing a whole long comment. And here in Outfunnel, I remember my first pull request, and then you had my colleagues Carl and Gert, who were just basically one-liner comments, and it's do it like that, do it like that, do it like that. And I was oh damn it, do they hate me? Do they don't like my code? And what's going on there? I was a little bit confused in the beginning. But then I realized, it's just like very straightforward. There's no time to be offended or no time for waste time in a sense. And I like that actually. And I think, at least from my experience, it took much more time to get stuff done in Germany in terms of like you talk too much about it and try to be too polite sometimes, even though it's work. It's just like code in a sense. You don't have to be the best friend with your colleague in a sense, like on a social level, which you can still be, of course. But it's like work and you're talking about code. And I also realized that actually this like is much faster, and also there's more honest discussions about code itself, since you maybe put a little bit like the emotional component out of it. Then you talk openly about it, nobody's offended, and I think in the end you have like actually better code quality, since it's less about like touching people with soft hands, and you don't want to offend another person, and you rather make not a comment because you don't want to offend him.
But don't you sometimes miss the pull requests or the comments that start with a sentence, "Dear Benedikt"?
Actually, no, I don't. Since like then you're like really you have like a huge comment I had, and then like the information you actually want to extract from it, it's like only maybe like 10% of it, and the rest is just like trying to smoothen it.
So it's interesting actually because you bring out the interesting point about the software quality and the way it's developed. There is of course a myth or perception of like big enterprise systems, poor quality information systems in sort of old Europe, let's say, and then there is sort of small, dynamic, nimble, fast sort of startup scene that is developing. So I wonder whether the approach in development that you just described has anything to do with this kind of perceptions. Because I mean, if I take Germany, for example, productivity is, I don't know, 3 times higher than in Estonia, like on average, like GDP, etc. I mean, it's just somewhere else completely. So maybe we have productivity gains or productivity higher in certain sectors in Estonia. Maybe the software development is one of those areas.
Yeah, like I think generally in Germany, we like, okay, maybe the productivity, like the GDP and stuff like that may be higher, but I think we are still lacking in terms of like digitalization itself, and we are still like always cautious when it comes to implementing new stuff and develop like new features and stuff like that. I would describe it like a little bit like a missing beta test mentality. Like we Germans are like really cautious when we want to implement something, new digital processes or applications, and we only want to implement something when really each use case is covered, like testing each use case. And that's also like a reason why administration, like the government and stuff like that, that's like very hard for them to implement new stuff, because they like are afraid of implementing something which is not like 100% finished and ready. But like in tech, especially like when bringing out new application feature, it's also like very important to get the feedback from the users. And then in Germany, you have like these waterfall methods. You try to plan everything from the beginning and only implement it when it's like 100% covered. And then in the end, you don't do it because like maybe in 2 years, it's already updated or whatever. And so maybe this also holds us a little bit back since we are too cautious.
But when you're comparing, for example, team structures, were they anyhow similar, different? What kind of roles existed in development teams? How many people were in a development team, and so on?
I think this is quite similar. Like at least in the companies I worked with, we also like try to implement agile methods and the agile ideology in terms of like smaller teams. We had like development teams of maximum like 8 people. Like it was more like 5 to 6 people. I had a product manager, and this was basically like a similar setup I see here as well.
And in terms of hierarchy and authority and command line, in a way,
power distance.
Yeah.
In the companies I worked with, like in the last company, in the beginning, it was actually very nice. Like the whole company, even like the 200 developers, it was basically only two layers. We had like all the developers, and then we had like the management, and the ways to communicate and discuss were very short. But there was like then a orga change where people started, okay, now we have like a area product manager, we have like a team product manager, and then like it started like to build up like a big hierarchy there. And then it became like a little bit more hassle, because like information flow took much longer to read something, and they always like emphasized of being like independent development teams of like maximum 8 people, which can make their own decisions. But in the end, it happened that like somebody else in the hierarchy upstairs threw the hammer and said like, no, we're doing it like that, and then we weren't really independent at all in the end. So yeah. Similar structure there with higher hierarchy, and yeah, more like people from top decide what to do.
Were those decisions coming from top down logical, or did they make sense? Was there a reasoning behind?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no, I would say. It's like obviously you have like then a product manager, you have an area product manager, then you have like the manager on top, and then the CEO, and then everybody wants to get his stuff done. He wants to like achieve his OKRs in the end, and then they try to do whatever it needs sometimes to make this happen, even though it seems sometimes unlogical. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So there's a kind of understanding that you may describe what to do, but the development teams should figure out how to do these things. Did they even come up with technical details, or try to decide technical details as well to prescribe how to do things?
Yeah. It really depends, like what kind of, at least in the company I was, what kind of like product manager you have. Like the product manager, like what his goal was basically to protect the developers from any customer inquiries and stuff like that. So if you were lucky, you had like a product manager who actually understood something about technical details, and then he could also communicate these details to you and the external sources. But it also can happen that this was not the case, and then it was super difficult, because then the product manager was promising something to other managers or other customers, and then you all of a sudden and then he comes to us and says like, we have to do this. We have like a sprint time, and we said like, no, this unfortunately takes 3 months or whatever, and then you're sitting there and have like miscommunication with product managers.
Interesting. This is actually pretty interesting, because product manager trying to protect developers from customers, while we should actually make sure that there is no protection, that the developers really understand why they're doing it, and then
kind of an anti-pattern.
Yeah, total anti-pattern.
Maybe not customers, it was more like protecting like internally. If you have like a big company and all of a sudden like other teams are reaching out to you, that basically if another team wants something from another team, always funnel it through the product
creating
manager.
silos and managing the dependencies.
But in that case, the other team acts as a customer for this team, so it can be seen as this kind of relationship as well.
Yeah.
So in my experience, having developers or finding developers with some past experience in a totally different domain has been really successful in terms of their career and proficiency and capabilities and so on. How has your business background helped you as a developer to be more effective or understand the customer more and so on? So how has it helped you?
Very good question. Like, it definitely helped me that I often also had like developer colleagues who were like very, very techy, and their goal was always to implement like the most perfect technical solution. But from a business, coming from a business background, and you understand basically there's also like we somehow like it's like a love-hate relationship. Like the tech people needs the business people, and the business people need the tech people to make things work in a company. And if you understand like how like we always like ask the business people like, yeah, try to understand us better. But like it should also go the other way around, that we also need to understand the business people as well, where they're coming from, why they are doing that, and why is it important. And then it's like sometimes even worth to like push out like a 70-80% solution, not the most perfect solution, since it doesn't matter if like the funding is not there anymore like next year. It doesn't matter if you have like a perfect developed solution, but it takes like double the time. And this definitely helped me, since I also played once like the role as a business person and communicated with customers or external partners and stuff like that, feel like a little bit how it is. And now being a developer, then if a product manager comes to me, then I know where he comes from and why he's doing that. And this definitely helps understanding why he may annoy me now, but then maybe it feels like a little bit annoying if he comes sometimes with like specific requests. But then I also try to remember how it is actually to be like a business person. It can also be hard. It's like not only we have a hard job, also business people have a hard job as well.
Can you bring some concrete or specific example where you sort of realized that your reaction, your approach was completely different to your colleagues potentially?
I had this colleague once in my last company where we wanted to bring out a feature, and he was really like basically always like 100% test coverage. He always wanted to have like basically everything covered, and then but there were like deadlines also in place, and he always tried to argue also like with the business, no, we can't push it out, like very cautious and 100% test coverage. And then
So he knew that the feature is working, but just coverage was missing.
Basically, like he knew it was working, but he has like his philosophy of like he wants like a 100% test coverage. And then it was really hard to argue with him, like also from a business side, that it's actually like whereas also like customer support is also there for it's like it's doable to manage basically flaws in a software. Like it's totally normal that people like are reaching out to customer service because something is not working and stuff like that. So he maybe didn't understand that it's okay to handle also like flaws in a software because there's also teams who can deal with these customers. So his expectation was like maybe he didn't know how this business processes work, that there's like some sort of customer support and they can actually help people to do stuff, and you don't have to cover everything.
You started to act as a sort of a translator there.
Somehow try to act as a translator, that try to explain that it's not like necessary and maybe not like always common, and that's okay to like not have like a 100% test coverage and so on and so on.
So it's somewhat a perception thing. How do you perceive the bugs that come in, and what kind of bugs should be caught by test coverage? So if you catch like 80% of the bugs, and then including more critical stuff, then these minor incidents may be handled by support services. It's somewhat similar if you get a code review comment that it can be done differently. And then it's, how do you perceive, did I do something wrong, or should we now start the discussion if it makes sense to go back and do the actual change, or is just too time consuming and we can leave it as it is and say that it can be done differently, but we won't do it differently?
I had this discussion, like especially in Outfunnel. Okay, we are like a fast-pacing startup, and there's obviously not always time to somehow like, okay, I developed something, and then it's like the comments were more most likely like, okay, yeah, we could do this approach. This approach may be better, but let's go not now with this approach, since it would be too time consuming, as you said. And then we just somehow like note down like these different approaches and try to basically maybe tackle this approach, later. So we needed to balance out in terms of like pushing out features, and even like if a developer took this approach wrong, we maybe also like push it out. And try to tackle this later. When it comes to test coverage, it's like, I think for me it's important that you have like some core features which are like really important in terms of Outfunnel. We are like syncing contacts between sales and marketing tools, and or syncing engagements, and this is like a core feature which we definitely want to keep. And if this would basically fail, then would be basically our code domain would fail, and the product itself is not usable. So I would basically like try to not accept basically any bugs which can like the core domain and the core features to fail. Everything else, which is basically, okay, if I'm missing out specific fields from Pipedrive, which I want to sync to MailChimp, and then I'm missing some fields, and one field is not syncing, and the customer doesn't see like a specific last name field or whatever, like, or any other field, but the sync itself is still working, then I think I would be fine with it, that this something like this is out and can be tackled later. So I think you need to define your core domain itself and try to keep this up.
Yeah, maybe let's circle back to you as a developer. So I have two sort of things that I would like to dig into. The first one being, if you can somehow describe the steps of evolution in your developer career, just to give a little bit sort of heads up for people who are also considering, what are the sort of major steps that you have taken, and then what was the context around it. You started as a sort of a test engineer, and then you went into the more serious stack, and now are more focusing maybe. So maybe you can describe this.
Yeah, like especially for like tips and people who want to pursue a career in the tech industry, like what was like somehow a big realization was for me when I actually like discovered the topic of like imposter syndrome. I didn't know basically that this exists before, and I always had like these self-doubts of like, okay, I'm not good enough for this job, I'm doubting my own abilities, my skill and my talents. I have somehow this internalized fear of like being exposed as a fraud, like I have never studied computer science and these kind of stuff. And like I think it's good to know that this is totally normal. I think there are studies which show like over 50% of developers have like experienced some sort of like imposter syndrome, where they're doubting their own abilities and skills. And it doesn't only affect like junior developers, even like senior developers are describing experiences where like they feel like, oh no, I'm not good enough for this job, I'm totally lost, like why do I have even this job? And this was like a realization, especially for me coming from like a non-tech study background, and always felt like and sometimes still do like this fear and this doubting of your abilities and your skills and talents, that it's basically like totally normal that developers can feel like that, and nothing to be ashamed of or something like that, and try to be like more open about it and embrace it in a sense that, and knowing that's totally normal. This was definitely a big step, and should take hopefully the fear away a little bit of like junior developers or people who want to pursue a career in IT.
Yeah, I guess one sign of intelligence is the behaviors that show that person understands that there is so much that they don't know.
I think that's
never goes away.
I was also thinking why, like, especially the tech industry itself is like prone to this imposter syndrome, and I think it's just like due to the tech very nature of the tech industry itself. It's like we have so many approaches, we have like so many frameworks, languages, and it's just like impossible to know everything as a developer. And in addition, it's like since it's evolving so fast, the tech industry, it's like I feel like frameworks, each month a new framework is coming out. That means also like that old frameworks, old languages, old approaches, which you may have learned basically back in the days, get obsolete. And then if like a new framework comes out, everybody's talking about it. You have never touched it, you have never like digged into it. It's like very easy to not feel good enough when all around you is talking about a new framework and you haven't dealt with it.
But if you remember back these moments where you felt like, all right, I'm getting it, I'm doing it, you know, what were those moments about?
The moments where I basically like when I started, like also a good thing to overcome this imposter syndrome is like to write down some achievements and to maybe it be like a private journal or just like as a note somewhere on your computer. And because it's like hard to argue against something which you have like written down on black and white sometimes. So if it's like written there, it's like it's difficult to doubt yourself when you have like standing in front of you. And there are like basically these moments where the first was basically, okay, I started this administration and then I applied for a master, and then I was like not sure if they take me and stuff like that. And then I was like, okay, like actually, then I got the application to go into the master program. I was like, okay, cool. Even though with my experience in this IT company, I actually did something I can do a master. Like I don't need a computer science bachelor degree to make this master, which was most of the time, like for other people also, like somehow was one of the requirements. Other stuff was basically, in my last company, trying to, like, I had a good mentor there, I must say, and he always tried to push me in a sense. What were the good feelings that he started with me abstracting away like the PHP language specifics, and he started to deal with me like with design patterns, with architectural patterns and stuff like that. And we spent a lot of evenings like developing together like specific design patterns, very easy in the beginning. And then if the feeling that basically, which is at the beginning overwhelming, there are so many frameworks and languages, and if you abstract it a little bit away and maybe start with like design patterns and stuff like that, which are like more general, that gave me a good feeling of like actually understanding the concepts, not like very language specifics. And this helped a lot to grasp the idea of like, okay, it doesn't matter if I don't know a specific language, the concepts are the same. If I understand the concept, that I don't fear so much learning a new language.
That's very cool. Are there moments when you realize that computer science education background would help you?
Good question. I'm like a little bit, I think there's always like this common topic about these Google and Apple interviews where it's very technical and you have like I don't know, dealing with linked list, and then you have these graph structures and you make a binary search or whatever. But for me, honestly, like my whole career, reading about like these tech interview questions, like these high-level tech interview questions, I never really like you needed any of it. And I feel like maybe it's a little bit outdated to go this road. I don't say they are not necessary. Obviously, there can be very specialized domains where you definitely need this kind of stuff. At least for me in web development, I never felt like, oh, I missed like some computer science, hardcore math classes, which I need now. I never really needed them.
All right. Yeah. And
so before we wrap up, Tiit, you wanted to ask something else?
I have one more question. Today, what is the hardest thing that you like meet all the time? You know, that okay, I'm doing it. Damn, this is hard. Is there a pattern like that?
Like especially like during my daily development life, you mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Like currently what I'm struggling with is a little bit, since we are a startup and want to push out features, I really learned to develop fast and push out stuff, but somehow I miss a little bit taking the time to discuss an approach, to discuss a little bit more architecture in deep, and maybe just take the time to think before just starting. I think it's totally okay to have phases in life as a developer to push out stuff, and you should also be okay to push out bad written code of your own sometimes, because deadlines and you want to push it out. But what I'm currently dealing with and struggling with is basically finding the time of taking a step back, thinking about the solution, and go more a little bit into understanding the concept, and maybe going to the drawing board, draw something out and stuff like that. This is my current struggle.
Would you say it's more about the actual lack of time, or struggle of finding time, or the discipline of finding time?
For me, it's maybe I think you can always argue to find the time. So it's basically the discipline of saying to yourself, okay, if you want to take this time, you can take this time. You can argue about it, that it's basically worth it in the end. So it's more for me putting on the switch of telling me, even if I miss a sprint task, it's worth it because I gave it much more thought, and in the end it turns out to be better.
Yeah, for me it's often about justifying the use of this time to myself, not to anybody else. That's not relevant, but I find it sometimes difficult to justify this time, but it's definitely necessary. So before we wrap up, I wanted to take one more topic, and that topic is software developers community in Estonia. So how do you learn and gather this knowledge today when you are in Estonia? Do you feel yourself more connected to the German software developers community or to the Estonian ones? And are there any, and what kind of events you maybe attend? Where do you get your information and new contacts?
In Germany, my last company, we had also these brown bag sessions, or these talks, these internal talks, and we tried to do in Darmstadt, gather the different IT companies in Darmstadt and invited them over. There was a topic, somebody gave a talk, and then afterwards pizza and beer or whatever, and talk about stuff. So this was definitely nice. Here in Estonia, since I have been here only for a year now, I really like in Outfunnel we have also these Outfunnel talks where we invite people over, people from Bolt, from Pipedrive, and different investors, for example, and having this sense of people, even though they may be competitors or whatever, that they come over and try to help each other. So I like this feeling in the Estonian community. I haven't really super figured out specific events to attend. Also a little bit difficult due to the Corona situation itself, but to gather my information, it's mainly about talking openly and honestly with my colleagues about the struggles, and not to be afraid of asking questions.
How well you're connected to the expat community in Estonia?
Not too much, actually. It's I was very lucky that that I got good connections to Estonians, also mainly to my Estonian girlfriend, that I got in touch with a lot of Estonian people, that I am more personally, I like it more when I'm diving into new culture, rather talking to Estonians, learning the language and getting to know the culture. I fear myself a little bit to get too much to an expat bubble, and then you're in this little bubble and you're only around expats, and you're basically living in your own like you're living in another country, but you're still living in your own country. And I don't want this to happen for myself, since I think people should appreciate when another like country lets you in, work there, have a good life there, which is was back in the years, like wasn't like totally possible for my parents or whatever. And I really appreciate that.
You already mentioned the difference in pull request text. So what other things have surprised you about Estonia and Estonians?
Other things which surprised me, actually, like one tech, let's say tech product, which surprised me in a sense. It's more like a funny story, that in Germany, when you are like in different shops and markets, you also get often like a customer card, a discount card and stuff like that. And we used to basically have like all these single cards, and you have like a wallet with all these single cards. And I was once with my girlfriend in a shop, and they asked me if I want a card. And always in Germany, I say no, because I don't want to basically take all these cards with me. And then I realized that you can put like these discount cards, these customer cards on your Estonian ID card. And I was so like, even though maybe it's like the most normal thing for you, but I was so amazed and surprised by the fact that you can like put discount and customer cards on your ID card and just have one card to carry around. That was very surprising and amazing, actually.
Very cool. All right.
So I think it's time to wrap up this episode. Thank you very much, Benedikt, for attending. Thank you for our listeners. And as usual, we're looking for feedback about this episode, about other episodes, and ideas for future episodes to come.
And we probably will do English episodes in future, not because of English, but because of the guest. So
yes, so get used to it. Sorry.
Thanks for having me. Aitäh kutse eest, I can say, I think.
Danke, Benedikt.
Bitteschön.